time to bring it in. Special switcheroo in the Bring It In world, which is Troops' little Zoom from home show. Adena Jones, famous True special correspondent from Wednesdays, is moving to Mondays starting right now. It's kind of a big deal.
I hope my fans can transfer, find me in the channel guide. It feels weird here, but I'm here. So
it's going to be okay.
Exactly.
Just remember, NBC moved Seinfeld around 5 different nights before they finally settled on Thursday night, and then he blew up. So
okay,
there's precedent here.
Okay, all right. Adena Jones, Seinfeld. I get it. I'm happy to be here, guys, as always, corresponding and a lot of stuff happening. I told the group that it feels like 20 years since our emergency TrueHoop meeting. I've literally aged that much, and I know you guys have met since then, but lots going on. Starting off with this because Mello is just a mood here, like getting off the plane with the bottle and the wine, and our TrueHoop fan, he comments, "The only way I want to get off a plane now," and I'm like, "Yeah, this is it."
Look at that hat. That's a great hat.
Yeah, nobody's. I definitely
look at the first tweet in response.
What did it say?
Cliff Robinson.
Oh, whoa. That's something. I actually didn't put Cliff in today. I mean, just so much going on, and my apologies, I forgot about that. But yeah.
Wow, small world.
I wonder if the algorithm raised it up or something.
It's also would note he's doing the glass and the bottle in the same hand.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And I wonder if he has another bag in the other hand. He's super double fisting, and I was like, this is just levels that
I'm impressed.
That I hope to get to, right? And then to stay mellow, it's matching with the red wine. And listen, and I wonder if that's CP3. Is it CP? No, Dwayne Wade has his own wine. I'm like, this would just tie in if that was Wade Cellars, right?
CJ McCollum has his own wine now too.
Yeah.
That's isn't he? Oh yeah, he has the wine. His.
And he had how many bottles in his room? 50 some odd bottles in his room.
Just enough.
Yeah. that could be it. Then going into this weekend, we had the unfortunate departure of Chadwick Boseman. It's weird because my husband's name is Chad, so a lot of times I just call him Chad, but it's Chadwick Boseman. And Coach, he told me about this article in the New Yorker. I love the photo in it. And, it talks about the lived-in grace of Chadwick Boseman. I think it's something to be said when a person becomes their character. Right now we're all mourning the Black Panther, but Chadwick was truly Black history. He played so many historic Black figures, James Bond, Jackie Robinson. He was in Thurgood Marshall. It was at one point in time, it was just okay, can they find other Black people to play this? But he was so good at what he did. He was the biopic king. And this article really went into that. We saw NBA players pay tribute to him with the Wakanda salute. This was powerful. And kudos to whoever caught this picture, because literally LeBron did his usual, clap together like that. And then he did this really quickly. And here he is. It was interesting because Chadwick, a lot of times he got
Panther.
Everywhere he go, everybody be like, put up the symbol, do it. And he started to look tired of it. And people were like, yo, he's probably tired. Stop making him do this. But really what he said was that it's a salute, right? You don't just go around saluting people. He said, it's out of respect, it's salute. So if someone does it to you, he's like, I do it back. And he did it at the Howard University commencement speech where he went and he gave it back. And it's always felt like that to me. It's felt like a salute. And an acknowledgement. I ran a half marathon in Central Park, and I think Black Panther just came out, and I saw a bunch of I think it was Black Girls Run, they're a running group, and I saw them at the end, and I just threw up the Wakanda, and everybody's like, ah! So it was I see you and you see me type thing. And here's LeBron commenting on what I think we all know by now.
That even though we knew it was a fictional story, it actually felt real. It actually felt like we finally had our Black superhero and nobody can touch us. So and to lose that, it's sad in our community. It's sad in our community. And to lose the Black Panther and the Black Mamba in the same year, We can all agree that 2020 is the shittiest year. But my 35 years, it's not even a question.
Like LeBron said a mouthful in that. It was like, yeah, it's a shitty ass year for that to happen. And it's just like, it's a shitty ass year. And one thing that he said about it being paramount to our community, and people are like, well, he's just a movie character. Well, I told you about how he literally played Black history, right? So there's that. And then, you know, Chad, my husband, loves comic books, and he's, you know, he told me so much about the Black Panther. And the Black Panther really was the ideological society that imagined what could Black people have been if Africa wasn't pillaged and colonized. Like, all the world's best resources come from Africa, and they were spread around the world. But what if these people, you know, got to keep their riches? Would they have vibranium, right? Like, would they have been the most advanced society in the world? Shuri is considered the smartest person in the Marvel universe, and it's really cool that she's a woman also. So the Black Panther represented a lot more than just a superhero. And I remember in I believe it was Infinity War. I got Infinity and Endgame mixed up, but it was the one where like the snap happened and everyone disappeared. And when I saw Black Panther go, and I was like, we just got a Black superhero, like, why? You know, it's always the myth that the Black person dies first in the scary movie. And I was like, this shit isn't fair. Thankfully, he came back in the next one, but I was really upset in that sense. And then here's Oladipo. I think we remember this. Oladipo paid tribute to the Black Panther.
I didn't remember, but it's
okay.
I didn't remember.
Yeah, and like once again, it had came out, and everybody was like, oh, you know, he saluted him, and Chad thankfully came up and saluted him also. And you know, Oladipo was like a little kid. Is, you know, what are you going to be for Halloween? And it was this, and you got to put this mask on. And Oladipo, being of African heritage, like this, and the Black Panther was just the biggest movie ever at that point in time. So this was a real poignant moment, and to have him courtside right there for that, like, that was big for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a pretty awesome one. And so I don't know if you guys seen me, and I just thought it was like happy kid, you know, but this is actually from I forget the name of the school, but it was like a famous school. The teacher was like always dancing with the kids, and they would go viral. And so they had gotten free tickets, the Ron Clark Academy, gotten tickets to all go see Black Panther. And this is how they reacted. That was just the symbol of unbridled joy. And I think
it goes on for like a minute.
Yeah. I didn't play the whole thing. I think, you know, that one kid became the meme, right? But I mean, there were kids dancing on tables all around. Like, this is what it meant to be like, you're just going to a movie, but nah, you're going to see the Black Panther, right? You're going to see yourself. You're going to see Wakanda. It meant so much to those kids. And for a movie to do that and continue to do that, amazing. And I think there's all this, you know, talk about who should be the next Black Panther, if we should have a next Black Panther. You know, if you know anything about the comic books, which I've been taught, is that the Black Panther lives on. And we even saw that in the movie, right? His dad was the Black Panther, his dad dies, and then it gets passed on. You can even, and Shuri actually is scheduled to be the next Black Panther, whether Chadwick lived or not. So hopefully we can continue to see this kind of unbridled joy given to people, and hope given to people via more Black Panthers. So we'll see. Shout out to D'Antoni. He wore this QR code. I haven't scanned it, but like, let's go, let's scan it. I don't know if you guys read, and maybe you could tell me the percentage, but something like 50% of the NBA players aren't registered to vote. It was some astronomical percentage. And so they're, you know, that's where you start, right? Let's start with that. And for anyone who doesn't know how to vote, like, this was a really dope way for D'Antoni to do it in his presser, talking about using the time and the space properly. Kyle Kuzma, he's always got something to say on the net. You know, and the tweet says, professional athletes boycotted games and matches, including the Utah Jazz, but the move doesn't bode well with some of the organization's fan base. Kuzma replies, well, guess what? Racism and discrimination doesn't bode well for us. Like, if this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing right now. And, you know, shout out to him for saying that. And then the untimely passing of John Thompson this morning kind of hit us all hard. That's why we're wearing white towels in honor. We even, Henry even studied the side that it mostly comes on. So thanks for that, Henry. Untimely passing of him and what he represented. I think he represented a lot of things for a lot of people. And, for me, he represented Black excellence. He was the first African-American coach to win a national championship. Also, I told you guys that at one point in time, I thought Georgetown was an HBCU just because of like how unapologetically Black John was, how the team being predominantly Black, and, having Allen Iverson on there. I don't know if many know, but probably if it wasn't for John Thompson, we wouldn't have gotten Allen Iverson when Allen Iverson was, he was basically ostracized from the NCAA in basketball at one point in time because of, I don't even know, a court case that and going to jail, and that really wasn't his fault. And he was persecuted unfairly, D1 schools, D2, D3, nobody was taking him. And shout out to Black mamas. His mom went down to Georgetown and was like, you have to take my son. And I think it was an easy decision. John selected him, and then we got everything that we got from Allen Iverson in that sense. Also, one thing I didn't know, like this morning was kind of an education for me. So if you look at the, guys, my husband's making bacon and I just smelled it. Sorry. Can't stop that. Anyway, if you look at the size of their jerseys, so the Georgetown Warriors, they recognize their African-American history. They wore it. People say it's a kente pattern. I don't quite see it as a kente pattern, but it is very African influenced, and that's big. Like, who's wearing African influence patterns on an NCAA jersey? Like, who
then
does?
Like decades ago?
Yeah, right? Like, we weren't in a Black Lives Matter world in that sense. Also, this image, I thought it was really pertinent. Allen Iverson wearing Jordan 11s, right? Wasn't a thing that you saw in NCAA play, and a couple of other players on the team wore them too. There were sneakers that were absolutely synonymous with Georgetown. The Terminators, I was actually going to pull up in another place, but the Terminators were considered synonymous, but it was important to see the Jordan 11s here. And actually, because you're in another lane headquarters and you see my background, so we have a pair, not necessarily the Concords that are pictured in there, but some people label these as a Georgetown Jordan 11 because of the colorway. So really, really important to sneaker culture and just African-American culture in general. Could go on about John Thompson. One thing that I think you guys will mention, and I tweeted this morning, I said, I'll stop sharing now. I said, if you are celebrating John Thompson this morning, but you are deriding NBA players for striking, then you need to read a book. Because there was a time where John actually walked off the court because of Proposition 48, which said that if players were academically ineligible, they had to give up their freshman year. And he really thought this was a racist, biased rule because it disproportionately affected African Americans. And the fact is that at that point in time, I think it was like 90% of the 600 NCAA players were Black. And let's keep it real, they were probably coming from blighted schools that were inept in the first place. And so you're basically not giving them a chance from jump. And so coach walked off the court because of that. And, we've seen, and so you're making your presence known by making your presence absent has been a thing in sports. And I think we've talked about that, and it can go both ways. And so just really happy to learn about John Thompson some more this morning. I'm sad to see him go though.
Thank you, Adena. I want to read a book. And my Wi-Fi is terrible today. I don't know what's happening. If I disappear, guys, you got this. You take the show over. It's fine. Tell. So this is this book about Washington, D.C. basketball. And as far as taking his players off the court, this is a high school story. Once during a game in Connecticut, he pulled his team off the floor and took a forfeit because he didn't think his team was getting. He also sat out Don Washington for disciplinary reasons from a key game during the 69-70 season, saying, "It was tough for me to do, but some things are more important than being number one." This is crazy bold for a coach, right? Taking your whole team off the floor in the middle of a high school game. And maybe I'm frozen.
Yeah.
You guys hear me?
No, we
No, I
heard
hear
you.
you fine.
Definitely heard you. But can you repeat why he took them off in high school? Why he took them off?
He thought they were getting bad calls, unfair calls from the refs. Game over. Took the forfeit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. John,
David, you have some John Thompson stories I know you want to tell.
Well, first of all, he wrote a book. I just wanted to look it up to make sure I was right. It was called Big Man on Campus. I have it somewhere behind me here. He was one of my favorite coaches for a million different reasons. He coached one of my favorite players, Horace Broadnex, who's my age, a year older than me. And but years, he was very famous at this point. I was coaching in a 5-star camp in Pennsylvania, and that camp's famous for being an outdoor camp. And the team, this was the year Steph Marbury was there and Vince Carter, and my team was undefeated, and our team was very good. And one of my best players was my student from Clearwater here named Mike McFarland. And Mike was having just a crazy good week as a shooter on an outdoor court in the hot sun and wind. It's pretty hard to make shots. And he was just so locked in and focused and playing really well. And he's also crazy. He would dive on the floor, like on concrete. Like he was so competitive. And so at one point he dives into like the bleachers. And in the bleachers are 400 college coaches every day. There were 9 future NBA players at this camp. So probably 50 high major, mid-major, what we call D1 players. So yeah, that book's amazing. And so when Mike dove and came back, and then I took him out a second, and he looked different. I said, "Are you hurt?" He's like, "No." I said, "Mike, something's wrong." He said, "John Thompson and Bobby Knight are in the front row." I said, "Mike, they've been there every game all week." He's like, "What?" They were in the front row at every time. And he did not play very well. And it wasn't because of Bobby Knight. It was John Thompson. It was his presence. And I told Adena this story. John was famous for having a deflated basketball behind him in his office so that when meeting with the player, you could not see the basketball. I remember reading an article, I think in Sports Illustrated about it. And it was such a great lesson for me as a young coach. That is who I need to be. John probably influenced him and John Chaney, who's a very famous coach from Temple. Those two guys influenced my philosophy as a coach of helping to build for men basketball than anyone else. And he really lived it.
Why the deflated ball?
To remind you that you're not going to be playing forever. Like, what are you doing when you can't play anymore? Because he was a great player. Yeah. He's like Bill Russell to me. He as a black man understood how to use basketball to not just inspire other people to more important life lessons, which is my exact quote, but to build his business to help more people on lessons beyond the court. It was a larger-than-life personality, well-deserved. And the last thing is the respect he had from people like Louis Carnesecca. In fact, the picture you put up there, Adena, was Felipe Lopez, New York City legend, played at St. John's, and Dean Smith, who's maybe the best coach of all time for college. Those two guys were like brothers, and they played against each other in that famous Jordan shot to win it all. That was against John Thompson. That was against Georgetown. That's right. His teams were must-watched also. There was something about them that was really special.
Like
no, you go.
And I was saying, listening to you, and when you mentioned John Chaney, I was like, rooted for John Chaney too. And it reminds me of like the Issa Rae quote, like I'm rooting for everybody that's black. And it's like when you get black folk on your side, like the Georgetown starter jacket and like jersey, you didn't have to be from that area to wear that. Like it just meant something to wear it anywhere. And because it told people that you were down for the cause, that you supported this black man. It was one of those jerseys that just like transcended everything. And another jersey I think that did it ironically was Allen Iverson's jersey, because it meant hip hop, it meant cool. And even being a kid growing up in New York, I was like, I gotta have a Sixers jersey to wear. And same thing with Chaney. I feel like we were all always rooting for him too. Like if your team got knocked out but they were still there, it was like boom, picking him. And that's how it went.
Well, that starting backcourt of the Sixers was Aaron McKee from John Chaney's program and Allen Iverson from John Thompson's program.
Yep. his most important attribute, probably when he was running a program, not from the individual point of view, but for those of us outside of Georgetown, it was basically fuck everybody. And this is why that was so important, because when he was coaching back then, and we know if things are bad in 2020, racially speaking, you know what it was like in the 80s and 90s when he was, this famous coach. So, and everyone wanted him just to fall in line and do what everyone else has been doing. And he was like, fuck everybody. That isn't working out for my players at all. We're going to do it this way. We're going to celebrate the color of our skin, their ethnicities, their backgrounds, all of it. Fuck everybody. And for those of us that were coaching those same kids, it was manna from heaven. Like, yes. I didn't have to be black to coach that way. That's exactly how I coached. He gave us permission to do that. Like, of course we stress academics. Of course we stress decency and honoring each other as teammates. But fuck everybody. If you want them to follow the same lines that have done nothing but persecute young black men for hundreds of years and 100 years in sports.
Yeah. Of course, your motto would be fuck it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I remember 2000, 2001, if you watch a Iverson documentary, you'll probably see me with hair as the 17th beat writer, walking around. I was that was one of the first teams I really was around a lot. And you could see the difference. So Allen Iverson around Larry Brown was upset, right? And then I got to go for some reason, because I was writing for the NBA's official magazine, got to go really backstage at the All-Star game that year, where I saw when John Thompson ran into Allen Iverson, and Allen Iverson's body just got happy, and John Thompson devoured him in a hug, and you could just see that Allen Iverson was like, oh, thank God,
yeah.
I really felt this kind of oh, your fuck everybody thing, David, is really saying to Felipe Lopez and Allen Iverson, I know what's going on with you. Yeah. I understand. And the way that Larry Brown is particularly bad understanding, right? I think that, these players feel very vulnerable, right? And Don Thompson's this giant man who's I got you. I understand. I know what you're going through. I get it. I know this stupid thing with the bowling alley. I know how they play these teams, right? I understand. Don't worry. We're going to get through this together. And I can just see, man, you want that. I mean, he was a very big man with a very deep voice. And if he said you're an asshole and you're good, everybody in the room would be yeah. That's right. That's how that goes, right?
Also, he probably gave the best hugs. He looks like he was built for hugs.
He's a big man. So I have one that connects to Thompson. I may have told a part of the story before, but when my mentor, Lon Kruger, one of my mentors, was coaching the World University team, which was the American team, under 21 or whatever, that would play internationally every few years. I was invited to come watch practice every day where they were practicing in Gainesville. An alternate on that team played for me in high school. That's why I was invited as much as anything. So I went to practice every day. Tim Duncan was their sixth best player. Just to get an idea of how good this team was, it's been written that it's the single best American team of all time, with the exception of maybe the Dream Team, per age group. Ray Allen was on the team. Kerry Kittles. Iverson was their point guard. Their backup, Chucky Atkins, played in the NBA for 10 years. They were all college kids at this point, right? And I'll never forget this. Each possession in a scrimmage, you normally give the ball to the point guard. And if you ever played pickup basketball, you know what check it up means. The offensive player gives the defensive player. The defensive player gives it back to the offensive player. Mm-hmm. Iverson would turn around every single time. Mm-hmm. Chucky would give him the ball. The third string point guard was Cameron Dollar, whose dad's a famous coach. Cameron won a national title at UCLA. So one of them would check it up with Iverson. He would turn around and look at Ray Allen, Kittles, Duncan, the starting five, and he'd say, let's play some defense. And he'd slam the ball on the ground, and then he'd give it to the point guard and get in his grill. This was every single time.
Oh my God.
After practice one night, I was hanging out with some of the coaches. The Gator coaches were all the coaches for the team. And we were just talking about what practice at Georgetown must be like. With John Thompson as the boss and Iverson at the point guard, that must be war, which is exactly, I'm sure, why they played the way they played. That's the dream of every coach, to get your guys to compete all the time. It is a contest. It is not an exhibition. And I love that aspect of, people don't think of Iverson because of the famous, we're talking about practice meme. I know what a lie that is. I witnessed him at practice as a 20-year-old phenom. He wasn't just trying to make the team. He was their best player. And he brought it every single possession in practice in Gainesville. They ended up playing in Japan. He had an excuse not to go hard there was no other way to do it but that way. And I think Coach Thompson, I'm sure Iverson was always competitive. He didn't hurt the process, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm. You get truth to power, yes.
There's a recurring theme of like behind the scenes in basketball is like, what do you do about characters like Rayful Edmond, who's so when Jesse Washington was on the show a while ago, I don't think I was here that day.
No,
but
you weren't.
Interviewed him. John Thompson selected Jesse. They are writing his official book together. I think it's out like any day now. It's out very soon. If it's not out already, there we go. Must read that. When I was talking to Jesse in advance of that, I asked him about Rayful Edmond. He said that's the thing people ask him about the most of all the John Thompson stories. And what happened was there was some kind of shenanigans around, like, did the coach of the Georgetown Hoyas meet with this like guy who was later proved to be like a pretty high level drug dealer? And John Thompson's like, yeah, I met with him. Like, I heard he was hanging around with some players, which is a thing that happens, right? Like, it's very beneficial if you're a drug dealer to have influence with celebrities, right? And John Thompson was one of the people, and I've heard of some others in basketball who are secret heroes of the game, where that giant man, right? Remember I said earlier about deciding who's good and who's bad. He was basically like, you need to back off, right? You need to leave my guys alone. Wow. That's an important gift to his players, right? And it's not a skill that Larry Brown has, right?
There's a long list of those guys.
Yeah. That's a big deal. You got to read that book. I haven't read it yet. I'd love to read.
He is very much as much a part of the fabric of sports today that it's a stitch you don't see because it's been a long time now.
Yeah.
But what he accomplished, I mean, Georgetown had such a feeling, a visceral, feeling when you watch them play. And Doug Gottlieb played against them twice and tweeted today, dealing with that press was a nightmare. And he did it in a very, he lovingly respected what Georgetown did. And it's true. I mean, to play against that team was not easy.
David, you took the towel idea, right? You stole this. This became one of your things you did.
I did, yeah. So he gave me permission to do it. I never would have done it otherwise. I initially did it. I told this story before, probably to Jesse. I was coaching outdoors in another camp, and they had a gnat problem. Actually, it was indoors, but they had no AC, so they left the doors open. So in Georgia, gnats in the summertime are awful, and you fought like crazy to get in front of the big floor fans. But if you were on the so-called away team, you couldn't be near the fan. The fan was by the home team. So the gnats were a problem. And so I started wearing a towel to swing the towel while I was coaching to keep the gnats off. But then I realized it's fantastic. I can wipe my face, I can clean the whiteboard, which I know grosses Judy out, but I was 24 years old, right? I didn't care about that. And that was it. I coached with towel ever since. Every single game. I just liked having it handy. And I didn't try to emulate John Thompson that way. I just knew if he could do it, I could do it. No one's going to question me if John did it. He just made it. It was so smart because you do sweat a lot, especially, and I used to wear a suit. I would get very wet during games. Back then, the 80s and early 90s, a lot of our gyms didn't have AC. I was coaching kids from the project. We never practiced in an air-conditioned gym, ever. We would travel to the project sometimes to practice because the volleyball team would have our gym. And those rec centers didn't have AC then either. They do now. They're great now. In fact, they're not even projects where I live now. They're amazing places. But back then, it was a challenge. And so I always had that towel with me. I never slapped anyone with it except my assistant coach one time. That's a different story.
What now?
No. I won't go into details.
Like one of these, or was it like?
I never did that. No. I once created. I wrote this in my book. You know the story, Henry, where I had to pretend that we were trying to score when we weren't trying to score, trying to slow the game down to keep it closer because we'd outmanned with injuries. And I had my assistant coach just pretend to yell at our players for not shooting because I was afraid if they realized we were delaying, they would start pressing us and we'd lose. And he's 6'9", very pale with red hair. And he would scream, "We got to shoot the ball." But it was all a lie. I told the players before the game, for one game only, ignore Coach Sebring. And I had to laugh so hard because I knew it was fake. And so I would constantly put my head in the towel. It was great.
Sideline theatrics. Wow.
We pulled it off, baby. It's in my book. We actually won our last 2 games of the year, very outmanned by pretending to try to score when we really weren't trying to score at all. It was great.
Love it.
Assist to John Thompson for the towel idea.
Yeah. Any other John Thompson thoughts before we move on?
We had a mention of Hoya Paranoia. Love it.
Yeah, that's
but
what it was. Hoya Paranoia.
No, just true hoop love to Thompson.
Yeah.
In a way, I was like, oh, how did the Hoyas not have the baggy shorts first? I feel like that was a missed opportunity there.
Right?
Right?
I mean, when they wore it, it worked, and it was like, duh, this was a match. But
But who really was Jordan starting that, or did Michigan?
Michigan.
Chad would know better than me.
Yeah.
Because Jordan in his documentary, it seemed like he was taking the credit, and then Michigan wore it. Everyone wanted to be like Michigan for sure.
Well, I mean, reading Levitard's story this morning and just putting things together, like Jordan it's weird because Jordan shied away from what felt like everything black. And even when I was watching the documentary, I was like, did Jordan really get down with rap? Obviously, I think he was listening to Kenny Lattimore or whatever on his headphones right that time. But he is wearing 2 chains in the dunk contest, and we associate so much hip hop and black culture with him. It's because I think people wanted to be like him, but he didn't necessarily embrace it. So the whole wearing the baggy shorts first, I feel like it might have been Michigan. I just
people credit Michigan, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm like, I've made a decision. I don't think it's Jordan, but maybe I'll be wrong.
I want a giant collection
Anita Baker, Gerard. Thank you. It was Anita Baker.
Oh, there you go. I want to make a collection of weird Jordan facts. This thing, one of those, for some reason, this sticks to me so much. Jordan was retired from basketball and potentially becoming a part owner of the Washington Wizards, and goes to Abe Pollin's house, and they serve salmon. And Jordan later says this the first time he had salmon in his life. I know. What? I guess it could happen. Okay. More of a steak guy.
Right. It wasn't like he was 14 from a small town in North Carolina. He was already a mega superstar at that point.
It was 20 years a millionaire, at that point.
Right, exactly. That's your point.
Yeah. That's so weird.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. I was just like, oh, now I want to review everything he ate up to that point.
Take it back.
David, you published a story this morning. I thought this was interesting. We talked a little bit about the bubble is stressful. You've been hearing from players who feel like they're never off duty. And sure enough, you've been noticing real deal defensive mistakes from top players during the playoffs. Talk about this.
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying I would have liked to support my theory with evidence showing how good offenses are playing, and there is. I didn't because I don't know the reason for sure why. They've been off for a long time. There is a freshness about all the players. Even last night, Gary Harris, who's been out since March 11th, was very, very energetic and athletic. Of course he is. He hasn't played since March 11th. And so I didn't think that was fair to cite the evidence. So I did, which is normally something you would always want to do. Just to my eyes, I'm seeing some horrendous mistakes defensively, things that should be the easiest things, not to execute necessarily, but at least to try, and just not pulling it off. I use 2 Harden GIFs where he just blows by people and does. I mean, if you scripted out the list of things you can't let Harden do, number 1 is straight line left hand layup or dunk. And yet against OKC, a very good team, he did it twice on 2 different occasions. And it's just embarrassing. So the stress of never being off, which Paul George talked about, I quote him, the stress now of dealing with what we're dealing with, and the TV networks have been talking to these coaches at these quarter sessions, what is it like for your players? And of course they're saying nice things about these players, but there's a lot going on with them. They don't have any break from basketball. And it's not just basketball in their minds by any stretch of the imagination. And remember this, for all the players that have family, which is pretty much everyone, whether it's their own spouse and children or their parents if they're very young, who are dealing with the racial issues we have in America every day, not in the bubble. And they are also dealing with COVID, right? The players have had a break. In fact, I've joked with some players when they leave, like, okay, you got to be careful now because it's different in the bubble. So their families are dealing with that too. It's created, I think, a little brain fog where again, Paul George kind of admitted this over the course of games. I had a player say to me, he just had I thought a bad first half. And a very good second half. And he said, I came at halftime and I almost couldn't remember anything that happened. And this guy normally can remember every single play from like 5 different camera angles in his brain. he just was out of it. And I just reminded him, you can't do that in the NBA playoffs.
Mhm.
But it's just, this is what's going on. So when you see some of these teams, you think, and I'm not saying coaches are blameless because they're not, but even last night, Jamal Murray is destroying Denver. And I didn't even barely write this in our piece, but he's had not one but two 50-point games, which is pretty amazing when you consider it. So is Donovan Mitchell. And before that, there had been two ever. Jordan did it once, 2 times once. Iverson 2 times, in one series. That was it. And now we've got 2 in the same series. But the Jazz knew they've got to stop Jamal Murray, and they could close it out. And he scored 50. And I could see the defensive coordinator for the Jazz at one point later in the game. He is standing up, and he's begging people to come double. Nothing. They finally doubled. I tweeted this out like a minute 14 to go. They're down 10. The game's over. They finally doubled. They actually executed it. I don't know if the coach called for it too late or if he's asked for it 3 minutes ago and no one ever did it. But there's just a lot of guys asleep at the wheel. Families, I guess, can return when, Henry? Final 4?
Yeah, I think so. Conference finals, yeah.
Conference finals. So that will give them at least some reprieve. I think actually more than just some. But still, it's a weird place that they're in. And we'll see it, not because they're shooting badly. That's a very different skill. I wrote it in my piece. There's a lot going on in your brain defensively. It's much more crystal clear offensively. You're reading, but it's a different kind of reading. Defensively, you're at peril all the time, especially guarding these great players. And so that's where we see it manifest a lot, I think.
This might not prove to be quite the Disney marketing it was envisioned as, right? Like, Paul George was really basically like, he talked about being locked up, and for me, it'd be my personal hell to be in a Disney resort for months. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was thinking about it. All these players really want is just to not be at Disney, right? Like that's not exactly the brochure.
Not be around basketball for a minute. And, obviously always great writing by Coach, but Armageddon fans, come for the Armageddon.
I didn't see your final piece. Did you include the GIF?
Yeah, of course.
It was
the YouTube, yeah.
Yeah, the YouTube one, yeah. The scariest environment imaginable. That's all I needed to know.
He was like, that's all
I never forget that, yeah.
One of the greatest lines in that movie. That's one of those movies that, if it's ever on television, when it's on television, I must stop everything and pay attention. It's a great clip.
Yeah, I didn't know it was going to make it into the Garden James Harden story. But
are we kidding? Well, yeah. So James Harden just right of the midline.
Yeah, that's
scariest amount imaginable because if he goes down the middle left, you are definitely screwed.
Yeah. I was thinking about it too. Remember, you wrote a story and we talked about it. The Mavericks did everything wrong for Luka's big shot, right?
Yeah.
They inbounded the wrong direction. They didn't get the foul to give. To me, that could have been the same exact thing we're talking about, right? Coaches could be subject to the same stresses.
Well, I mean, just before then, it may not have been exactly then because they didn't list it, but I was telling you, I think I was saying on here that during a timeout, Luka was flipping bottles trying to get them to land upright. I mean, during the timeout.
Yeah. So
he had little water bottles. That wasn't a sign of disrespect to Rick Carlisle. And I was joking, he likes to compete. He's trying to really work to get that. But that's a mind not really locked into the moment. And
there's a clip of LeBron doing that in a game, but I think they were up by whatever point. And
this was overtime in the playoffs.
Yeah, it low-key was like a sign of disrespect, like, let's go home. But you don't, and it wasn't a playoff game when he did it, for real.
Yeah.
One of the things we've talked about, which I'd love to get to, is big men. It's a complicated story. We've talked about it some. You were talking about, David, there was a stretch of a game where it'd be better off just taking Nikola Jokic out of the game. He's scouts travel the world trying to find a Nikola Jokic, of which there are one on the planet Earth.
Right.
But because he's so good at so many things, his size is so valuable, his vision, all this stuff. But the way basketball goes now, sometimes you would just want to take him out because he's not helping your team, which is kind of an amazing thing. But it's not the same as saying that big men are done. And a really stupid measure of that, well, it's not as stupid, but what short game plus minus, raw plus minus is not a particularly meaningful thing. You can get scary lessons from it. But just for fun, I just looked up who's been on the court when their teams have done the best in these playoffs. And half of the top 10 are big men. which is just a sign that like there's a more to the story now than just, everyone's the Houston Rockets with no big man anymore. Like it's Ivica Zubac of the Clippers, number 1, Anthony Davis, number 2, and on and on. Serge Ibaka's up there. It's just a little bit more. And then I know you put it in the doc that we shared, like, I have strong feelings about this. So lay it on me.
Yeah, so the reason why we talked about Jokic is he's just killing them defensively, and still is. So Jamal Murray is killing it for Denver, but not with forays to the rim. Rudy Gobert's having a very good series. I would argue that he's outplaying. I have to look at the stats, but I've watched every game, and to my eyes, my naked eyes, in a sense, I would say Gobert's been better than Jokic. The difference is Jamal Murray's been reining in jumpers and threes. A lot less layups in half court. Full court's different. Rudy's protecting the paint. Jokic isn't. Gobert's getting dunks all over the place. Donovan Mitchell forays to the rim easily. And that's why I said that. But so when you think about big men today and teams wanted to switch or at least somewhat, or hide they want to play a player that isn't a very good offensive player, but he can guard anyone. Well, if you can guard a big guy like, the Plumlee kid for Denver can't score, okay? But you better not try to put just your wing on Zubac. He's going to kill him in the paint. That dude can score. Vucevic from Orlando, his team is beat up. That dude is going to score like you're not even guarding him. And so the big guys that can do the two things, protect the rim and beat up switches, are valuable. For the ones that can score against same size, whatever, they're all-stars. If you can protect the rim, right, and score against guys your size, you're an all-star.
Yeah.
Okay? If you can protect the paint and just score, period, you're going to play. If I was a college coach trying to create NBA players, I would spend so much time on finishing moves against smaller guys and protecting the rim and not fouling, which drives me crazy. Obviously, you have to develop hands and all those things that help scoring too. So when you mentioned Zubac as number 1, Henry, I tweeted this last night. I think it was last night. At first, I've always been thinking the Pelicans should have him. I've been saying this for months.
Right.
He should be, but the Lakers should have him.
Yeah.
That's really. Someone had to remind me of that like 5 months ago. Like, no, Coach Thorpe shouldn't be on the Pelicans. He should be on the Lakers.
Yeah.
And it's true. Now, LA's doing great with Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee. McGee didn't do well the last game, but they've been doing fine. But I would much rather have Zubac, 23, 22? Yeah. He's a young guy. And he's just getting better and better.
And they trashed him after they traded him away, too. I don't know if you saw
they did?
that. Yeah. They're like, I can't play.
Oh, I love him. But I'm glad you mentioned, of course, Anthony Davis. He's amazing. But I wrote, I can write it because it's right there in the stats. Ibaka's been terrific. Not yesterday. He's been really good. People have joked about him for years because they always thought he was older than what he is. And I've always argued that. I've coached players. I've coached black and white players that look older than what they really were and look younger than what they said they were. I can't ever tell. But I sat next to Serge Ibaka as a rookie at the NBA Summer League in Orlando, as Henry remembers. Mm-hmm. The Orlando Summer League, there's no fans. It's what we have right now.
Yeah.
Like 12 guys in a health club. Yeah.
Right.
12 guys.
As a media member and a coach for a lot of the players, to be able to just sit courtside and not have to talk to anyone and just deal with the pain in the ass for the fans. And I get the fans being there. Vegas was a nightmare. I sat with Serge for like a course of games. I don't even remember why he was watching these games. I never heard of him before until the draft process. And he was just he seemed like exactly what the age he said he was. He was just a delightful, impressive young man. And to see him still have major game when the naysayers were saying he's 10 years older than what he really is, which is, in my opinion, kind of a racist thing that some people tend to do anyway. Mm-hmm. It's great to see, and you wrote Bam Adebayo too. That series starts today, Miami, Milwaukee. And I'm having a hard time picking Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. I'm having a hard time because of Bam. Mm-hmm. Bam can do what Brook Lopez does, guard the rim, and then not shoot threes like Brook. He doesn't shoot threes, but help your offense. Mm-hmm. They run their offense through him. He creates passing angles for players. You have to guard him, otherwise his passing angles are even easier. And defensively, he guards everybody. And I don't have faith in Milwaukee's core players after Giannis, who's the best player on the court. Miami's got unless Middleton and Bledsoe really surge, Miami's got a bunch of, and Milwaukee gives up the most threes in the league. And Miami's, I think, number 2 in the league in shooting. So there's going to be a choice. Now, Milwaukee can adjust and decide to guard shooters. They can do that. But Coach Budenholzer tends to not be so quick to adjust. And it might be down 2-0 before he finally realizes, screw it, we got to change what we're doing. It would be a mistake if he does that. He needs to extend his defense right now, and then hope that Brook can make plays at the rim, or I think they'll lose. I
think Jimmy Butler not dominating the ball as much makes this it feels to me like all 5 Miami players are super scary on offense the whole time because you don't know where the attack is coming from.
I totally agree.
So much shooting now, right? It's fun to watch. I'm nervous. Like basically, I watch with somebody's gonna attack them somewhere. I don't know where.
It's true. They really have a complex. They ran. I said this 2 weeks ago. They run the best offense. They ran the best offense in the seeding games.
Coach, I wanted to ask you. I feel like we talked about this before the NBA went into the bubble, and we have guys that are having trouble, in the bubble because mentally. But are there guys that you think are thriving? Like you just, you spoke about Ibaka, and I mean Jamal Murray. We talked about that was a defensive thing, but is this good for some players to just be like,
oh yeah, well, first of all, let's be clear. Jamal Murray, who I was wrong. I never have thought he was a definite all-star. I was wrong because I never saw this. I've just never seen him take over like this, and he's doing it with Jokic on his team, which isn't easy. So I think he was 17 of 24 and 25 yesterday. Mm-hmm. Okay, even though the Jazz defended him poorly, they did try to defend him. Most guys couldn't make that wide open. Like this guy is killing it. So he is going to be anyone's watching won't ever forget what he's doing in these games. They just have to be watching, and no one's watching that series probably. Tyler Hero is another guy that I don't really pay attention to guys in the draft anymore. I haven't had to. Maybe this year, Henry, you'll have me focus on draft guys. I just haven't done it. He was a well-known guy coming out of Kentucky. He is their closer now. He's closing games for Miami, and the lineup they're closing with the Heat in the first round against Indiana, which was a competitive series. It was a sweep, but Indiana's missing players. But still, games weren't 30-point blowouts every game. He's on the court like in the last few minutes of the game as a rookie. So this is a big deal. They have Duncan Robinson sometimes on the bench. He beat out Kendrick Nunn, who's had a very, very good year for them, who doesn't even play really anymore. Hero is a guy. So those are two guys that really have done very well. Crypto's been good for LA. He's just not a good shooter, but he's really gotten good at the pick and roll game with AD especially. I think someone just wrote about this actually.
Since I'm among friends, I can ask you a quick question. Is he getting whiter? It's whiter, right?
I don't know about that. You shouldn't. I mean, it's Florida. You're really staying indoors. I can't be pale right now. The sun's
he's really. I mean, I'm willing to talk. He's very white right now.
Yeah, I won't argue that he's very pale. So is Tyler Hero. So is
Tyler Hero.
Yeah, he's really pale. But those guys are doing very good. Kuzma's playing good defense for the Lakers, which is not something you typically see. On another side note, real quick, I haven't talked to Henry about this. The fight with Luka Doncic drew a flagrant call from Marcus Morris Sr., who got ejected.
Yes.
And they took a couple of shots at him. And the Clippers now don't have him. I think he'll sit for game one. I'm not sure it's been announced yet. But I think he's going to have to miss game one. That's a big deal. Yeah. He's an important player to them. The Clippers still, I mean, basically it's the Kawhi show. Paul George definitely played better since he publicly, which tells you something. When you kind of get the albatross off your shoulder when you just are honest about your vulnerability.
Albatross.
Yeah. The Marcus Morris issue, like they need him, and I'm disappointed. The Clippers, Kawhi Leonard is the Terminator. I mean, he just is. And I picked the Lakers to win the whole thing because of the duo of LeBron and Davis. Where I'll miss, the Clippers have the most talent for sure. Where I'll miss is Kawhi just won't let them lose. Yeah, it's a bad. Luka's upset.
Yeah.
Luka said some shit. Yeah.
We should bring in Gerard before my Wi-Fi dies. And really fast, I did also look at this. We should talk about this at more length, but when I was looking at some stats from the playoffs, at first I looked at who fouls the least, like per minute played. And of course it's like superstars, right? It's LeBron, Damian Lillard, etc. And then I look at the opposite, who draws the fouls the most, and it's the same exact dudes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of being a superstar is working the refs, right? This is just, we know this, but it's amazing how stark it was. You'd think that the players drawing least fouls would be players who were uninvolved, but it's like LeBron's involved, but he's just never getting involved.
But I'm going to say one quick thing and then let Gerard jump in on all the important things we talked about. They're just also smarter. I watch these games. Thorpe's rule of defense, number one, do not foul. Yeah. And these guys are smart. And people are fouling players that have no chance of making that shot. Just like we talked about with blackjack. In my article today, I compared the game day defense to blackjack. You got to play the odds. The odds are they're not going to make that shot. Don't fucking foul them.
Yep.
And so these stars who know every time they foul, they potentially lower their minutes for the game because of foul trouble. They're smart about it. So, all right. What's up, Gerard?
What's up, guys? Adena, really good JT tribute. I like you when you were younger, you thought Georgetown's an HBCU, right? Like that's just kind of the vibe you got from Georgetown. Of course.
Until I visited it, I ended up visiting. I was going to go, and it was like 4 white girls in a convertible, like, come to Georgetown.
And you were like, nah.
Not even close.
Until you go there or you do a little bit of reading, you're like, yeah, they're not quite that. But, all good. Actually, I wanted to stay on the Clippers Maverick series. Coach, I think you're right. Marcus Morris probably going to miss the first game because it's flagrant 2. I will say this about that, and he should be suspended. I want to make sure that we're all clear when we're watching what's going on. Luka gives out as much physical punishment as he gets. Like, when you slow down and watch the games, he is elbowing and using his body to push people off, right? Like, that is very obvious. So just want to be clear about that. It's, part of basketball, dudes are physical. Like, this is what goes on. I will say, though, Kawhi Leonard, we talk about Giannis and Luka is next and this person and Jamal Murray and that, and they're all fantastic and doing great.
It's Kawhi.
Kawhi is incredible, man. Like, I watched those last 7 possessions, and I'm like, what are you even doing? Like, he just gets the ball, and it's like, all right, this is going to go in right now. And the defenders are, like, literally in his shorts. Doesn't matter. Going in anyway. Like, you can't stop him from catching the ball where he wants it. You can't stop him from playing the pace he wants to play. Last year when he was in Toronto, I was at the Philly series, game 5. And after the game, I asked him, I was like, Kawhi, you seem to always be under control. And, classic Kawhi, robotic, like, I just work a long time on this and it's just nothing speeds me up. I'm never hurried. I know what I want to do out there. And, like, even his response was like, I'm not going to give it to you fast. I'm going to give it to you in this slow, deliberate way. That's just, he can just do that. And it's incredible. And we have to remember, this guy's going for history. Like, he's going for potentially his 3rd finals MVP with a different freaking franchise. Like, that's outstanding. Like, he won't ever get the, like, regular season numbers because he's got to load manage, but whatever. Like, this is one of the greatest basketball players we have ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
There was one other thing that I forgot to mention about Thompson. I mean, like, I was in a Thompson black hole today. It was great. And I'm going to continue. So, because we were talking about how we thought it was an HBCU, right? And, like, but how at this kind of school? Like, how did they let that happen? How did fans feel about it? And I was reading that in 1975, he had a poor season, and at their home arena, McDonough Arena, someone took a bed sheet, laid it across the stands, and wrote "N-word flop must go." Thompson, N-word flop must go, and that was towards him. And I was like, see, this is like, even if you win a Benz, you still an N-word, as Kanye says.
No doubt.
Yeah, so it's been about that life, coming up behind Russell and being a social justice warrior too.
What happened in the fallout from that? Did anybody get in trouble for that?
No, but they ended up talking about firing John Thompson because it was on the table and it was like, so you're not going to call him the N-word and then fire him? Like, yeah, it's not happening.
Coach, I know you talked about this. Beyond getting to him early, doubling and trapping, like what are you do? What are your, if you're saying to your team, right, is how we got to defend Jamal Murray? What are some different things? Obviously giving him different looks, I imagine, but are you giving him the Steph Curry, Dame Lillard treatment? Trap, get the ball out of his hands, and let these other 4 dudes beat us?
No, actually, I've had to diagnose ways to defend Jamal Murray before, and so I've studied a lot of tape on it. So the way to defend Jamal Murray is not great at finishing. He wants to stop and shoot. You got to treat him like he's Dirk, actually. With back in the day, Dirk would kill you with 18-foot fadeaways. A shot you would give everyone on the planet, but you would definitely lose if you let Dirk in his prime to shoot that shot. So with Jamal, you actually have to let him beat you, right? So in other words, so a lot of times what happens when guys make a move, you kind of escape, step away, give him a bubble between him and you, and give the mid-range up. Obviously, you stay pressed up at 3, but then when he's inside 3, you back up and try to force the mid-range. Jamal Murray wants that, and he isn't missing right now. Again, 17 of whatever, 24, 25. So what you do is you stay connected to him. He beats you. You continue to stay connected, a half step behind him, but he can't get the easy jumper. You can make a play on it from behind a little bit, and you got to push him in to help. You got to push him in to help. And these guys, either they aren't finding him, which is too often, or they keep racing towards the rim. Now, they did better yesterday for a while at staying connected behind him and bring him into traffic, and then they just forgot about it. And he went from not really playing so well at all to realizing, okay, these guys are back to being as dumb as they were before. I'm going to rain jumpers on their heads all game long, and he did. That's what you got to do to him. You can also double, but it's very hard because Jokic is the best pressure release man in basketball or the world's most gigantic men. So Jokic qualifies, 7 foot, whatever, right? And then the most dangerous pressure release guy is the huge man you can't deny when you're trapping somewhere else that can also destroy you with a pass. Like, you can't script a better pressure release guy than Nikola Jokic. So if they really want to do send 2 to Murray, they're going to try to take away Jokic. He's going to get to the middle and post up in a sense, and then he's definitely going to carve you up with a pass for a 3 or a dunk. So that's why trapping, I think, to me is very scary. You're better off just making Jamal drive into traffic, bring help, kind of flood inside. If he passes out, someone else has to beat you. Jeremy Grant was very important. I think I mentioned him, my unsung heroes, in my article this week, because he's making some threes. And it's got to be some besides Murray and Jokic making shots. And he's been really good in some of their, again, it doesn't really matter how you do in losses. If you're playing well and wins and it's 3-3, you've managed to do something. And now it goes to game 7. I mean, the Jazz could definitely win game 7, but Denver hasn't found anything except for the one guy they can't guard. And that's enough right now.
Who's going to win? You didn't really tell us Heat Bucks. Who do you think's going to win?
Denver?
No, Heat Bucks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or
yeah, I mean, you know how I am with predictions. I have no clue how these Milwaukee players are going to play. Middleton's been so hot and cold. Bledsoe's been just all right. I'm giving the Heat an advantage for now because I just haven't seen Milwaukee play well. And Miami's playing so well. Jimmy Butler's shoulders tweaked up. That concerns me some. They need him to play well. Henry's point is great, because they're way better off when Jimmy's just one of the guys. He'll still score his points because he's Jimmy Buckets, and he's a great defender. And they have a lot of guys that can bother Giannis. So again, it goes to blackjack. He's still gonna get 21 when he's dealt to 16. He's just not getting as much as he used to because they have a lot of guys that can do some damage. If Miami shoots the way they're capable of shooting it, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a 6 or 7 game series. But I think Miami's got it. I think Miami's got a good chance anyway. I wouldn't have thought that 2 months ago, 3 months ago, pre-pandemic, but I do now.
And that's Bam, coach, right? Like, he can guard Giannis without help, right? So it's
everybody. He can guard everybody. And Jimmy Butler can too. Yeah.
I'm having a mental, to end the show here, we're all wearing towels on our right shoulders, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Why does it appear differently? Does it appear to you that we're all wearing them on the same side?
It looks like I'm wearing mine on the wrong. To me, everyone has the same one.
This is flipping me out. What's happening?
Actually,
I just thought the same thing.
Yes,
all,
correct.
all of you are right-shouldered as they're all the same thing, but for me, it looks like it's the opposite one. But I know this is my right hand. I'm sure of that.
I am so confused by this. Anyway.
Perspective.
Optical illusion. We need to get a scientist on next time.
I'm glad it wasn't just me. Yeah, we'll do next year. Wednesday show 100% about this.
All right, be safe, everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys. Talk to you soon.